All right, we are just about ready to begin. Things will look a little differently this evening. In the most recent talks, we have been talking about soul. And we have said that soul is a state of being that is somewhere between spirit and matter. Now, these states of being are the stuff of the evolutionary creation in which we are very fortunate to participate. It is a creation, and creation by definition means something new. It is new for the Creator just as it is for us. It's impossible that there can be new things for us and evolution for us, for all of the beings in the creation, and no novelty or evolution for the macrocosm, for the one. The creation takes place in two major stages. And those two stages are involution and evolution, which unfortunately is a word that has several different usages, and we will use several of those usages in this talk, so I hope it isn't confusing. What we're doing now is we're doing a little bit of review. In fact, there are going to be two reviews before we actually get into the material for this evening. Talking about involution. During involution, spirit becomes involved in matter. During evolution, the spirit evolves out of matter. Involution is actually about the materialization of spirit. Now, these two major states, spirit and matter, are actually within a oneness that is so unified that it is unspeakable. And the name for that unspeakable is the Absolute. The Absolute is about everything that is, and everything that isn't, and everything that could be, and it is beyond our ability to comprehend, so we can't say more than that. That which could be is called potential. Now, when we're talking about spirit and matter, spirit is the knower and the known. It knows, and what it knows is it. It sounds solipsistic, but some things that are so transcendental and so unified in spirit, they don't work in our language. Now, the evolutionary creation that we are participating in is analogous to the kinds of creation that we as humans make. It's more on a grand scale and greater depth, but it is analogous. Spirit is creative. It is auto-inspirational. It is filled with the inspiration to give and to create. it is also filled with curiosity about the unknown. We don't know how much unknown there is, because if we try to quantify it, it is no longer unknown. Now, it projects a creative dream, and that dream is simultaneously a hypothesis. And through the dream and the hypothesis is how the spirit gets to know the unknown. We know this dream and this hypothesis as the divine creative scheme. And we've been studying this for quite a few lectures now. And fortunately or unfortunately, we will be discussing it for quite a few more. Now, the creative scheme takes place in the co-potentials of time and space. The potential stands between what is happening and what could be in the absolute. And so the potential is a co-potential where time relates to spirit and attitude of spirit, and space relates to matter. But there are, as in spiritual science as much as in physics science, time and space are co-potential. Now, in the creative scheme, there are formations of concrete matter called globes. And the globes are found in worlds, and the worlds are states of matter crystallized out of or in space. Now, these states of matter, as we're looking at it, are congealed ignorance. It indicates where our knowledge ends and where the unknown begins. And they are where the creative dream proceeds from the known and where it meets the unknown. So all the worlds that we see around us now are a creation, but through them, the unknown is being made known. It's a manifest activity. Now, in the potential of time, there are periods during which spiritual activities are, how to say it? They're just carried out. Now, the transcendental spiritual worlds are internal differentiations of spirit within itself. And we have different manifestations of spirit within itself. All right. That's involution. That's a quick review of what we have done so far in the past few talks. Evolution is about the spiritualization of matter. And the spiritualization of matter is making the unknown known. First, you project the dream and settle it into the unknown, and then through the dream, you spiritualize the unknown, or you make it known. This is what the process is all about. Now, this is true on several levels of creation and cognition simultaneously. We, in our human consciousness, our consciousness is pretty small. We can't carry on several things at the same time. There are people who have amazing abilities, like jugglers and people like that, but when we're talking on several levels of being, We're not so adept at that yet. Now, all of this is the interaction between spirit and matter and between the known and the unknown is vigorous. It is transforming. If you look at chemical reactions, where that is at the lowest level of where the known is interacting with the unknown, chemical interactions are not gentle things. They're pretty vigorous. And so the whole activity is vigorous. Now, there is a state of being between matter and spirit. And that is to say, when matter is partially spiritualized, or the unknown is partially known, that state is called soul. So, you can say that soul is partially spiritualized matter or partially known through experience. So it's a kind of a state of semi-consciousness that the soul it isn't alive in the same way that spirit is alive, and it isn't conscious in the same way that spirit is conscious, but it isn't unconscious in the way that matter can be. All right, so we're saying it's a state of a semi-consciousness. Words like that are very difficult to use because the way we normally use them in our language is different. Now, we have said in past talks that soul cannot be generated until the human stage of evolution. And the human stage of evolution is when we are no longer creatures, but we are becoming spiritual creators. It's a transitional state, but only when the spirit becomes indwelling and self-conscious and capable of using its vehicles, only then can soul be generated. Now, the vehicle's consciousness that we are drawing into now, it's not complete for certain, that we are drawing into now, we have built them over a long, long evolution. And they are made up of the stuff of the worlds to which they correlate. That is, our dense physical bodies are made up of the stuff of the dense physical world. So, the different, you can say that these vehicles are repositories of consciousness of our past evolutionary experience. For example, our dense physical bodies are a history of everything that we have learned about interacting with the physical world and have been able to incorporate it into the organization that we call our physical body, that we know physicality, or that we experience it, or that we interact with it. So all of our vehicles are state-of-the-art, as far as we go with it, statements of our experience with the different worlds that we have vehicles for. And those are, we have the dense physical body, which corresponds to this chemical subdivision of the physical world. We have an etheric vital body, which corresponds to the etheric subdivision of the physical world. And we have a desire body or an emotional body, some call it even an astral body, that relates to the desire world or the emotional world or the astral world. You know, I try to be fair to everybody who listens to these talks, and I try to use the terminology that they are familiar with, but it gets a little cumbersome once in a while. And the last concrete vehicle that we have is the concrete mind. And it relates to the concrete subdivision of the world of thought. Now, in each of these vehicles, we generate a different kind of soul by interacting with the world, the corresponding world. Conscious soul or consciousness soul is generated through the dense physical body in interaction with the chemical subdivision. Intellectual soul is generated in the etheric vital body through interaction with the etheric subdivision of the physical world, with the ethers. And emotional soul is generated in the desire world through the individual desire body. You could say it's a desire body or an emotional body or an astral body. All right. In this activity of soul growth, those are the types of soul that are generated. But in soul growth and relating spirit matter into spirit, the mind, the concrete mind, has a central role in soul growth. And that is the topic for this evening, which we will get to after another introduction, is the place of the concrete mind in the generation, absorption, and assimilation of soul. Now, as humans, the concrete mind is at the center of our being. Now, there is a symbolic diagram which is very helpful and also very not helpful because it's only two-dimensional and it's talking about things that are multidimensional. It's something like a stereopticon, or it is like a movie projector or something of that nature. This is what that diagram looks like. The lower part are the concrete bodies. The upper part are the threefold spirit and going up even into higher spiritual realms. And in the center is the concrete mind. Now, let's briefly look at each of these. The lowest segment of the lower triangle is the chemicals. This is the next one up is the ethers. The next one up is the desire world. And the whole I formation here is the concrete subdivision of the world of thought. The first one up is the human spirit, which is also the abstract subdivision of the world of thought. And the next one up is the life spirit, and the next one up is the divine spirit. Now we're going to go back and forth talking about this for most of the evening this evening, which may be a little bit awkward. So we've already said the upper part consists of divine spirit, life spirit, human spirit. The lower part is chemical body, vital body, desire body, and then the center part is the concrete mind. Now, this diagram is a description of a human at this time in the evolutionary creation. It hasn't always been together like this. The spirit hasn't always been the spirit hasn't always been connected to the bodies as it is now. And so we've been talking all along about how this happened, how this all came about in evolution. And hopefully every one of you will someday have the kind of cosmic memory that you can remember, that you can re-experience these periods way back in the evolutionary creation. At the end of the Saturn period, we had only the physical body, and only the divine spirit. Everything in between was non-existent. There was an association with them, a reflective association, because this whole business is a reflective projection, but that's all there was. At the end of the Sun period, we had what was to become the vital body interpenetrating the physical body, and we went through a plant-like stage. In the Saturn period, we were only mineral-like and we had only form. But in the plant-like stage, we could have forms that grow and that have life and that could change shape. And corresponding to that, we developed the life spirit. And the life spirit is the pure imagination, and it is the very spiritual essence of life itself. But again, the middle part was non-existent. Again, it was a matter of association through reflective projection. Then in the Moon period, we developed the desire body. It gave us motivation. And with that motivation, we could move around. And that we were in an animal-like state. Corresponding to that, we developed the human spirit. And the human spirit is a specific identity, like the experience of being a disconnected body, which is what the body of an animal is. That state of independent disconnection and free roaming and the desire to move awakened and reflected into the spirit to being an individual being. Now that individual being was not yet awake. So at the end of the Moon period, we had the threefold body and the threefold spirit, but they were not yet connected. They were bending toward each other, and they were, a creator always wants to be united with its creation, and that was what was happening with us. Now, during the Saturn, Sun, and Moon periods, the whole business of the creation through all of the globes and revolutions and things like that was sinking deeper and deeper into materialization. And so now we have come to the fourth period, which is called the Earth period, and we have reached the nadir, the depth of concretion. It is now as concrete as it's going to be. In fact, people who have a greater controlled and trained sensitivity say that we have already passed the deepest state of materialization and we're starting to come out of hard concretion. In this fourth period, the Earth period, all of our vehicles are in standard position, which is to say that the physical vehicle is in the physical world. It wasn't that way in the past. In the Moon period, the physical world was in the etheric subdivision. But now, each of the bodies is in the world to which it perfectly corresponds. So this is the standard of the creation. This is the objectification through humans of this whole creation, with us being the pacemaker or the shuttlecock for the whole of creativity. And in this fourth period, this earth period, we are developing the concrete mind. And the concrete mind is that which connects our spiritual being with our material being. It connects spirit, body, and spirit. And it is in this fourth or earth period that the spirit draws into its bodies. It's not enough to just merely be connected, it actually draws into it. Now in future talks we're going to do different things with this diagram to indicate what is taking place, but for right now we can just say that through the focus of mind, the spirit is in our body. This is a very important stage, because from within we can fully utilize our vehicles and we can develop them, and this compounding of soul, this spiritualization of matter, it can be done at its optimum if we are within the vehicles that work on the worlds that are the unknown to us. Now, as we enter into our various bodies, through them, we work more efficiently on the bodies and the worlds, and our work is then the spiritualization of matter. Now, the matter that we have worked on and that we have transformed or have become knowing of is soul. Now, since we're working through three bodies, we generate three types of soul. The most important type of soul is the soul developed through our dense physical bodies, which is called conscious or consciousness soul. And that is the most important because that is the most ripe for us now. The etheric vital body hasn't reached its highest stage of development and perfection yet. But at the same time, because the spirit is within its vital body, maybe not quite as knowingly as it is within the physical body, it develops out of the etheric interaction, it develops the intellectual soul. And finally, we're not so good at this yet because we're not really too aware of our emotions and feelings and desires, and we don't have a wide range of them. To a large extent, the desires rule us rather than we ruling them. So we do develop emotional soul, but not as much. In previous talks, we've talked about emotional soul as what most people think soul really is, and not understanding the whole process. All right. Now, this work is not some woo-woo voodoo activity. The generation of soul material takes place in our lives. It is taking place in everything from the food we consume to the work that we do or the appreciation that we have of nature or when we interact with nature. So this is not something this is not something that is foreign. This is not something that is a specialty. It is something that we're all doing, though most people are not conscious of it. And that is the purpose of these talks, is to make us more conscious of actually what we are doing. And when we're conscious of what we're doing, we can do it better. We can do it more efficiently. We can get much more out of it. So, the fact that we have something to know greatly enhances our performance in what we're supposed to be doing. Now, some people have a purpose in life to have a family, and other people have a purpose in life to have a career or something like that. But really, the big performance that in which all of the other purposes of life abide is the work, the evolutionary work that we are part of. And if we are aware of that, we don't abandon our daily work, but we do it much better. And when we do it better, we do the greater work better. All right. Now there are ways, there are exercises for improving in doing this, but there would be a little extraneous to what we're doing right now in this talk. From time to time, like even later on tonight, we'll talk about an exercise for absorbing and assimilating soul material. But, you know, all right, we're not going to go into that. Now, we have reviewed the overall activity for a second time, but with a different emphasis. You recognize that all of these talks could be, we could go over the same material time and time again, but each from a different point of view, and each would enrich our lives. Well, that's a little bit tedious for what most people like, so we will move along. We won't be stuck on this sort of topic forever. So, let's get to that topic, which is the place of the concrete mind in soul growth. First, let's look at the function of the concrete mind in general. Now, if we go to our diagram, we see that the concrete mind looks like a lens. And that is intentional because the functionality with regard to our spiritual evolution of the concrete minds is as a lens. It is the lens through which spirit focuses into matter. But moreover, it is not only a lens, but it is a mirror. If we see, we have a lower and an upper surface to this lens. And those lenses have a mirror-like effect, so that we have then four different kinds of operations of the mind. There are two reflections, reflection from below, reflection from above, and the lens is two-way. There is projection from spirit into matter, and there is taking things from matter into spirit. So we have two lenses and two mirrors and a bidirectional lens. Now we could say much more sophisticated things about the mind, but that's not the purpose of this talk. We're just being very simple here, and we're wanting to work on things that that are useful to us in our lives. All right. Now we're going to look at each of these four activities of the mind. But when we do this, it's important that we note that the principle of analogy holds, and that what we're saying about the mind applies in microcosm and macrocosm. For example, we're talking about this, the diagram is the individual human mind. But there is a collective, there is a cosmic concrete mind, which is made up of all of our minds and all of the other beings that are capable of concrete thought. Now, for example, the creation, the evolutionary creation, the scheme of which we are studying, is brought into material existence through the mind. But it isn't only by us. We are part of the creative gods, and we are doing part of that work, but it isn't exclusively us. We work together with the gods, or better said, other gods, but if we can do that without becoming egoistic. All right, so let's now begin to look at the four uses of the mind. The first case is reflection from the spirit off of the surface of the mind back into the spirit, that kind of reflection. It is a top-down reflection, and you can consider it a transcendental reflection. Now, for most humans, this activity is not a reality because we're not very conscious in spirit. The reason, we just don't have much transcendental experience. Very few people are aware of their selfhood, and they don't self-watch. Very few people have had an experience or a baptism of the Holy Spirit. So they haven't had that full waking awareness in the human spirit. And even fewer have had the experience of Christ consciousness in the world of life spirit. And fewer yet have had consciousness. There may be but a very few among our humanity that has consciousness of divine spirit. That it's so beyond us that we couldn't even recognize it if it was tried to be explained to us. So we're talking about reflection of spiritual consciousness off of the upper surface of the concrete mind. And you can refer to that consciousness as light. If you are conscious of something, you are lit up, literally, on every level. Whether you're aware in the desire world, your desire body is bright and shiny and you're interested in everything. And if you are in the transcendental threefold spirit, if you are consciously aware, you are lit. But if you don't have any light, you can't reflect it off of that service. So for most people, this whole way of using the mind is not available to them. Now, oh boy, I got to be careful here. Now, it is possible that there is a dim waking consciousness in the spirit, transcendentally, not in the physical body. And we have that, we understand that once in a while. There are times, the way it's normally said in regular human language, there are times when we realize that God has a plan for us. Well, that plan, and that it is God, but it is the individual, the threefold spirit, that has a degree of waking consciousness of which we, it's not the same thing as having a Christ consciousness experience or baptism by the Holy Spirit. Now, we can intellectually understand these things. We intellectually know that the life spirit is altruistic, and altruism is based on loving every other being as we love the people we love the most. It's like a universal friendship. And that altruism is a product of the fact that the life spirit is the selfness out of which all individual selves are precipitated. So, when Christ, speaking from life spirit, says, love thy neighbor as thyself, he's talking about altruism. And he's talking about it, if we're to be at one with Christ, we are to experience that same sort of reality for ourselves. Now, the divine spirit seems even more aloof from selfhood than the altruism of life spirit. Because we get a glimpse of altruism now and then, or we get a feel of it. But divine spirit is pure, undifferentiated being. And that is way, way beyond us. So, the activity of reflection, transcendental reflection, which is what we're speaking of, is to bring selfhood, uniqueness, and our very being to the life spirit and the human spirit. Because normally, life spirit is pure altruism. And normally, divine spirit is pure being. There is not a unique self to them. But with transcendental reflection, the quality of the self gets reflected onto life spirit and divine spirit, which makes us sort of a super being. This is something that is in the far distant future that we will practice this. But it won't be a personal, well, I like this or I like that, but each of us is a unique spiritual being with a unique point of view. And unique means one and only one. And that will be brought to the life spirit and to the divine spirit through this kind of activity.